right, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all things leader related to leading yourself and leading others. I'm John Laurito, your host. Thank you for joining the show today. I got to tell you, I just popped up to my daughter's room and I stole 2 Tootsie Rolls. I forgot how damn good Tootsie Rolls are. Holy Jesus. Those things are fantastic. They're too small, though. Need bigger ones. But, wow, if you hadn't had a Tootsie Roll recently, just go find one, have it. It's magical. Magically delicious. So the other thing that was really cool, so I got my daughter for Christmas a sunset lamp, which, wow, she was like, you got to come up and see this. She set it up. I popped in her room. It was like a sunset was coming through her window. It was unreal. Very, very cool. And as you know, environment is important to you. So figure out how to create the environment that's conducive for you to be happy and productive and relaxed, and just put it together. You know, I'm working on my office right now and making a whole bunch of changes. You're going to see a different background in this podcast moving forward, hopefully after this weekend, and some cool stuff coming. But you know what? We're all in charge of our own environment. So create the environment that makes you happy. If it's a big bowl of Tootsie Rolls next to you, great. If it's sunset lamp, great. Whatever it is, figure it out and do it. Music, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's not the topic of today's podcast. Today's podcast is one of many that I'm going to do on decision making. And I want to talk about the concept, and a quick story I'll share with you here, which I'll share the story first, then I'm going to talk about the concept. So in 2014, there's a state-owned railway system in France called SNCF. And people had noticed, strangely, that the platforms, they thought, in France, the train platforms were getting smaller. Weird, like noticeably, but not like crazy, but they just started noticing, wait a sec, is this really getting smaller or not? So in any event, people were kind of scratching their head on this, debating whether or not it was the case. The French newspaper, Le Canard des Champs, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm mispronouncing. I can't read my own handwriting. Le Canard et Champs, Le Canard des Champs, noticed this thing and called up the SNCF and said, are your platforms actually getting smaller? I mean, many people have noticed this. They pretty much dodged the answer and dodged the question, didn't give an answer. And this paper did a bunch of research, and they found out that, yes, they were making the platforms smaller, but there was a really good reason for it, a very interesting reason for it. See, earlier that year, the SNCF, state-owned railway system in France, had spent $20 billion on revamping their entire fleet of trains. They bought 2,000 new trains. And it was part of this major overhaul of their transportation system. $20 billion, not million, $20 billion on 2,000 trains. Somebody do the math real quick. 20, is that $10 million per train? I don't know. But anyways, so bottom line is, what they found is that they had measured a small portion of the platforms prior to placing this huge order. But what they didn't do was measure all the platforms. They didn't do all the legwork and research that they needed to. And what happened was, these trains that they had built, that they spent $20 billion on, were actually 8 inches too wide. So literally 25% of the platforms across the country, the platforms were too wide, and the train could not fit in the station. Literally 8 inches. They could not fit in the station. That's like buying a Ferrari, but your garage is not big enough. It doesn't fit. It's like, wait a sec, what? We spent all this money, $20 billion on new trains, yet 25% of our platforms. Now, this was 1,300 platforms. 1,300 platforms. 300 took months. They did like months and months and months and work, lots of money. They did it like in the middle of the night. They didn't want to like people to know, I think. It was embarrassing. And they got done with that and they had 1,000 more to do. It was 1,300 platforms that were 8 inches too wide. They could not fit these trains. It actually ended up costing taxpayers $65 million. $65 million. And again, this problem is that they had measured some of the platforms, but not all of the platforms. Some of them, not all of them. Major problem, avoidable, and literally it was kind of this comical. I mean, obviously people went to town on their thoughts and feelings and all kinds of stuff about this whole dilemma. Could you imagine paying that $65 million out of taxpayer money because they had only measured some of the platforms and they had to reduce the size of 1,300 of them? Okay, bottom line, and I'm not picking on France by any means. People make decisions like this all the time. They make mistakes like this. Companies, individuals, countries make mistakes like this all the time. One of the most important things to do in making a decision, I just taught a workshop on decision making. One of the most important things is you have to ensure that you have accurate data. You've got to make sure you're looking at accurate information to make a decision. In this case, they thought they did. They had a small sample that they thought was representative of the whole, which I see that mistake happening so much all the time. And it was inaccurate. It was misinformation. So I want you to think about this. You're the CEO of your company or senior leader of your organization, and you're making a decision based on feedback from a small portion of people that you assume is representative of the whole. And it may not be. We do that oftentimes. We just assume the loudest voice we hear is representative of everybody. And oftentimes, and I will say most of the time, it's actually not. That person, just by their nature, is more vocal, they're more outspoken, they have stronger opinions about things, but oftentimes, and most of the times, they're not representative of the whole. So you have to be very careful as a leader. If part of your data collection, part of the information that you're looking at to make a decision is people's opinion, you really have to get a great sampling and the right sampling. If you're weighing people's opinions, if that's part of your process, you have to ensure it's not just the people, your top producers, it's also the people at the bottom. It's not just the people that have been there 15, 20 years. It's the people that are new to the company. It's not just men, it's women. It's not just women, it's men. It's not just people in their getting ready to retire. It's people that are millennials. It's whatever. It's all different, diverse group representation, rather, of your organization. All different types of backgrounds, everything. That's going to give you more accurate info. If part of it is figuring out, okay, I need to understand what is happening, where our process breaks down, I can't just look at and observe, so if I'm running a bunch of Starbucks and I'm trying to figure out why are people not ordering this new, venti, triple latte, whatever, that's just come out, that's a new thing on the menu, I can't just go to one Starbucks and sit there for an hour and talk to maybe the baristas and figure out the answer to that. It's probably going to be much bigger than that, right? So I have to ensure that the data that I'm getting is accurate. I think that's one of the most difficult things in decision making that leaders face. It's very hard to get all the information, but once you do, that decision oftentimes becomes a lot clearer. So if you're struggling to make a decision, ask yourself, if you got a big decision coming up, ask yourself, how confident am I that I am truly looking at accurate information and I have all the data to be able to make the right decision? If you're not 100% confident, go back, recheck, go through and just accumulate, do better due diligence, whatever you have to do so that you're looking at that total picture. Again, I've used the analogy. Sometimes we look at 1 or 2 or 3 pixels and we draw a whole picture based on that. And in reality, it could be an entirely different picture. Those pixels could be something totally different. So don't let your mind create a picture that just doesn't exist or is dramatically or drastically or grossly overstated or inaccurate. Okay, that does not serve you well in making great decisions. You're never going to be able to make all decisions right, of course. But if you can make one or two great decisions every year that you would not have otherwise made. So if your process for making decisions, and over the course of a few of these podcasts, we're going to go through different things. I'm going to talk about cognitive biases next time. But if you can be conscious of some of these and improve your decision making, even 1 or 2%, that's going to be 1 or 2 big decisions a year that you make that are good ones instead of bad ones that you might regret. And that's my hope, is that I can share with you some of the ways that I've seen the best leaders out there use to make better decisions, both personally and for their businesses, and ultimately leads to long-term success. So just a quick story that I thought was interesting to emphasize a point. Again, I love your stories, by the way. Share them with me. Give me your examples, your ideas. And as always, I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you subscribing. I appreciate you sharing, liking, commenting, all that kind of good stuff. And of course, go down below, give 5-star review, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.